Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining. I want to seek the blessings of Radha Madhav, Radha Shyamsundar, Krishna Balaram, Bhagavad Gonitai, Shri Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, and the assembled devotees. So today, I wanted to start chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. And the summary, this is entitled Dhyan Yoga. At the end of chapter 5, Krishna briefly mentioned the system of Astanga Yoga, the strict, regulated, focused regime of an ascetic yogi. In the present day, millions of people worldwide practice elements of this path, primarily as Hatha Yoga or Pranayam, which offers benefits for physical and emotional well-being. In this chapter, the path of Astanga Yoga is explained in its entirety. The themes are as follows: the state of the mind, the detailed practice of Astanga Yoga, which is very difficult to perform in this age. Arjuna questions this practice as it is very difficult, and Krishna guides him. What happens, then Arjuna also asks the question, what happens to the spiritualist who can't achieve the end result? Is he lost both in this world and he hasn't attained the spiritual world? And then Krishna answers that question very beautifully. And then the yogi performing bhakti yoga is the best, which is what Krishna's verdict is. So let's start with text 1. Sitaram, would you like to read?
Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is a true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Text number 2. What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Text number 3. For one who is neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. 4. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Number 5. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is a friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Number 6. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Number 7. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, and honor and dishonor are the same. Text number 8. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied with virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it is pebble, stone, or gold, as the same. Number 9. A person is consciously distinct, further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral meditators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, always of equal mind.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Okay, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So, first 9 verses, Krishna describes the mind. The mind is that voice within, essentially a storehouse of memories and experiences that offer options to the individual. And it's almost as if it's alive. An uncontrolled mind will agitate, misguide, entangle the soul within this world. forcing us to succumb to our lower nature of lust, anger, and greed. And vast majority of people have uncontrolled mind, unfortunately, because there's no training from the beginning of our journey in this world. There's no training given by, in this age of Kali Yuga especially, no training given. So what do you expect? However, the controlled mind, on the other hand, acts as a friend on our spiritual journey, helping us make progressive and healthy choices which bring us closer to God. One experiences tranquility, peace, freedom from the duality of happiness and distress. So this is what we want, because controlled mind will help us on our journey. So lesson 23, as described to Arjuna in the second chapter, we are not the body. So some people may think that we are the mind. Yeah, we're not the body. So many people don't even think about this, but effectively the mind becomes the self. However, here Krishna informs us that we are not the mind, as it can be the friend or enemy of the soul. So the mind is separate from the soul, and we can tell that. Indeed, we can observe the mind, but because people always do what the mind dictates, the soul does not come into the picture. So this is the point. And as soon as one starts, this is a really nice picture actually. So the mind is like the reins, and the senses are the wild horses which take us in one direction and another direction. So if the mind is not controlling the senses, the horses are not controlled by the reins, then the chariot go all over the place. So the driver is the intelligence, and we are the passenger. The soul is a passenger in this vehicle. So we have to control the mind, which controls the senses. And to control the mind, we need to use our intelligence. And the thing is, most people don't realize the mind is separate from the soul until you start to meditate. As soon as you start to meditate, as soon as you start to sit down and chant Hare Krishna, you realize the mind is so awkward. The mind will take us all over the place, and we try to control the mind, bring it back to the chanting. That's how we can realize we are not the mind, we're separate from the mind. So very powerful. Mind is very powerful, and we have to try to control the mind. All right, let's try to go through the next slot. There's quite a lot of verses. Maybe Karuna, would you like to read these verses? There's quite a lot here. Oh, she might be busy. Okay.
Text 10.
Okay, thank you.
A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an
Mm.
unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains the kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by cessation of material existence. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too less, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. When the yogi, by the practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This is indeed actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Thus, the self controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes freed from all material contamination and achieves the highest state of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Such a yogi, who engages in the worshipful service of the Super Soul, knowing that I and the Super Soul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings, in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna.
Wow, wonderful. Very well read. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So this is where Krishna gives Arjuna a bit of a shock. And this is a way to control the mind through the process of Astanga Yoga, which includes Dhyana Yoga, the practice of meditation. So Krishna explains what are the different things. Living in seclusion. So when we're living with others, obviously that can have, tensions or, repercussions, or, being together with others is also a good thing. It's good and it's not so good necessarily. So living alone takes you away, can potentially have the impact of helping you control the mind because you don't have so much disturbance or good things going on. Practicing celibacy helps. Under the strict regulation of eating and sleeping. So Krishna says, you can't be a yogi if you eat too much or eat too little or sleep too much, sleep too little. And also sitting in a perfectly erect position, focusing the consciousness on the Supreme, meditating in this way for years, maintaining silence. This is challenging. Why did Krishna explain all this to Arjun? Because Arjun wanted to stop fighting, go to the forest. So Krishna blinds Arjun with the science of Dhyan Yoga, gives it to him as it is. So lesson to learn from this. This science described by Krishna is difficult to practice in its entirety in the age of Kali Yuga. Some bits you can do, eating, sleeping, we can control that. Practicing celibacy is controllable. The rest can be challenging. Sitting in an erect position, that's possible as well. But, we have our comforts and it's difficult to get out of that comfort zone. Meditating for years, that's challenging. Living in seclusion is challenging. So it's difficult to practice this in its entirety. This is what Krishna wanted Arjun to understand. He wanted to show Arjun that he cannot become a sannyasi in the forest. His nature won't allow him. That's not what he is all about. But there is one text 16, which is very interesting. Don't eat too much, don't eat too little, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. That's something we can put into practice, which will help us. And yes, Prabhupada, you're right. Your comment, it's very difficult to control the mind. And this is exactly what Arjun now tells Krishna. This is different yogas. Nowadays, people follow Hatha yoga, but they actually don't realize that yoga means connecting with God. They think that yoga is just a physical exercise or a breathing exercise, but it's much, much more than that. It's connecting with God. And these different yama, niyama, asan, pranayam, pratyahara, hara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, they're the different yoga system or part of the Astanga yoga, Patanjali yoga system. Very hard to practice in this age. Some parts we can, but most parts we can't. So now Arjun, asks the questions. Shyam, would you like to read this?
Yes, Prabhu. I'm in the cupboard. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I can, Prabhu.
Okay, go for it.
Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Text 34, the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Text 35, Lord Sri Krishna said, Almighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Text 36, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work, but he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. When we chant japa, it's a test of how controlled our mind is. If we can focus on the sound of the holy names throughout the chanting, then our mind is our friend. If not, then we have an an uncontrolled mind, which is our worst enemy. Let's practice by chanting one round. Practice detachment.
Thank you. So we can do that at the end, chant one round. But this is where we are tested. Our mind is tested. Our resolve is tested. How strong is our control over our mind? If we can chant and focus on the sound, then that's good news. But here Arjun tells Krishna, I can't do what you have described. This Ashtanga yoga practice is far easier for me to control the wind. And he could control the wind with his Gandiva. He was very powerful. But he's saying to control the mind, not so easy. So, and we know how strong the wind is, right? It's nothing stronger than Vayu. Hanuman was the son of Vayu. He was so strong. So nothing, it's very difficult to control the wind. But what Arjun is saying, I've got a better chance of controlling the wind than I have controlling the mind. So it's a very good analogy. But Krishna says to him, yes, you're right. It is hard to control the restless mind. But then he gives him the formula of how to do it. It is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. This is very important. Suitable practice means when we chant, the mind goes somewhere, we bring it back. And we'll see the mind go, bring it back, keep bringing it back. That practice is very important. Keep bringing the mind back. Over time, over years, over decades, eventually, slowly, we'll be able to control the mind. And detachment means not to worry about what's going on around us. Let that happen. What is most important thing at the time when we are chanting, is the listening to the holy names. And everything else should be secondary. Don't be attached to other things at this, especially at that time, because that is the critical time when we're chanting. Get that bit right. And the rest of the day goes very smoothly. The rest of the life will go very smoothly. So then the last bit, which I can do actually. Yeah. Arjun said, "Oh Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere?" Very, very good question. This is my doubt, O Krishna. I ask you to dispel it completely, but for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So Krishna says, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pratha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world nor in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So this is so reassuring, because we know this path is difficult, but this Krishna is giving so much comfort. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planet of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life. He again tries to make progress, further progress, in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. By virtue of divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic practices, principles. Even without seeking them, such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the spiritual goal. Really fantastic. So encouraging. Arjun asks on our behalf, what happens if one faithfully takes to this yogic process, but later falls away without perfecting his spiritual consciousness? The unsuccessful spiritualist is seemingly left in no man's land, having failed to attain spiritual satisfaction and simultaneously squandering his opportunity for worldly pleasure. Krishna appeases all such fears by explaining that whoever takes up a genuine spiritual process is eternally benefited, even if they don't perfect it. If we don't complete it in one lifetime, we carry on in the next life from the same point. The individual thus evolves towards spiritual perfection. It's a lesson from this one. When we take shelter of Krishna and perform bhakti, it is never lost. The Lord magnifies our contribution. He will not look at the bad qualities, only the good. Only the good. And that example is Putana, Gasur, Shishupal. He never took Shishupal's insults as insults. He never took them as aparadh. He took them as compliments. And he promoted Shishupal to the spiritual world. Same with Agasur, same with Putana. Putana came to kill him, but he accepted the breast milk and he promoted her to nurse in the spiritual world. This is only the Lord can do this. Only the Lord and the spiritual master. This, our Guru Maharaj, he used to, you just bring a little glass of water for him, he used to say, Shabash, Small thing, but he would magnify it. So Krishna is in the same way. Magnifies anything we do for him. He will look at the squirrel who helped Ram build the bridge across to Lanka. He was doing hardly anything, right? Little pebbles he was bringing onto the bridge. What can that do? Maybe fill some gaps here and there, not much else. But Ramachandra considered his contribution as good as Hanuman's. So this is God, this is Krishna, this is Ram. Whatever we do spiritually, it is never lost. In fact, we will start again. If we abandon that process, we will start. We will not lose it. We will continue in that process. This is why Bhakti Yoga is so powerful, so very, very powerful. And Krishna's answers give us so much encouragement. And Prabhaben, would you like to read these couple of verses here?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Did I read day before yesterday? All right, or was it?
Yes, it was good. It was good. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I did tell you that I have got problem with the pronunciation.
No, it was fine. It was fine.
All right. Hare Krishna Prabhuji and all the devotees. Chapter 6, Dhyan Yoga. Text 46. A yogi is a greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiristic, and the greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjun, in all circumstances, be yogi. Text 47. And all the yogis, the one with the great faith, who always abide in me, think of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of the all. That is my opinion. End of chapter 6, Abhyas Yoga.
Thank you. Very good. So this is this final verse is really a fantastic summary of this chapter as well. Krishna is saying that yogi who has faith in me, thinks of me, renders service to me, he's the best. That's Bhakti Yoga. So after summarizing the arduous process of dhyan, meditation, and astanga, yoga, the chapter concludes with a ray of hope for us. Krishna reaffirms that the perfection and goal of all yoga systems is to help the individual become fully conscious of God at all times. While all yoga systems are certainly beneficial, the easiest, most efficient and essential path is known as Bhakti Yoga. The yoga ladder is as follows. So in Kali Yuga especially, we have this very easy access to yoga ladder, or Bhakti Yoga rather. So we know the bottom is the animal life. We're no better than sleeping, eating, mating, defending. That's what the animals do. And if that's all we do, then we know better than the animals. Karma Kanda, where we make a transaction, a deal with the demigods. I do something for you, you give me. Then we have Karma Yoga. And there's two types of Karma Yoga. One where we give up the fruits, but we still attach to them. And then there's Nishkam Karma Yoga, where we not attach to the fruits and we give them up as well. And then there is Gyan Yoga. Gyan Yoga is where we acquire knowledge about God. Dhyan Yoga, Astanga Yoga, where we control the mind. That's considered even higher than Gyan Yoga. But the highest of all is Bhakti Yoga, because that is where we connected intimately with God. Very powerful, very, very, very powerful. And that will take us back to the spiritual world directly. It is considered the most easiest and direct way to attain God. And it's like, you're not taking the staircase, you're taking the elevator up all the way to Krishna. Very powerful. So there's so many different yoga systems. We just need to be aware that these other ones, so that we focus on our Bhakti Yoga. So I wanted to stop there. And this is text 47, the last one. One who has great faith in God, takes shelter in him, always thinking of God, Krishna, rendering service to him. He's intimately united with Krishna. And that is yoga. Okay, so I wanted to stop there. Any comments, any questions anybody had? Very interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. You know, you said about the mind is like a horse, and it is true.
Yeah.
It goes everywhere, everywhere.
It does.
It is very difficult to control. Even when you're doing your puja,
very difficult.
It's difficult. I must agree with that. I mean, you are telling when you can do a meditation, you do the dhyan, but still some reason you can't control it. Control it.
The horses are like the senses, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the hands, the legs. The tongue. They sort of, if the mind doesn't control the senses, then we're in trouble. And as soon as the mind starts to control what we eat, what we listen to, what we speak, then the mind becomes our friend.
What we should do?
Yeah. So what the mind has to do is to control the senses, because higher than the senses is the mind. So the mind needs to control the senses. And how to do that? Krishna explains. By practice and detachment. As soon as the mind goes somewhere, bring it back. Bring it back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Any comments? Wonderful chapter. Krishna gives us so much nectar in this chapter, especially when he's saying how those who don't complete the path, they're not lost. Bhagavad Gita ki jai, chapter 6 ki jai.